Hello and welcome to All My Art and Soul. This week's video, I'm going to be demonstrating and exploring different layers now. Now that I focused a little bit on shape, I'm going to show you how to just explore before I move into some bigger pieces and then canvas and so on, because I'm sticking with this color palette, which will be in the description below. And these are 8x8 heavier paper. You can use any kind of heavy paper, watercolor. You can use a cradle board. You can use anything like that. And I started off with a layer of gesso, and as you can see, I'm using this craft brush. I don't know the official name, but I call them, they're very bristly and leave a really nice texture. I don't always want that particular texture. Now I'm looking for variations in the texture. But so I'm sort of chatting here, and I did use part of this video in my Facebook group, but that was just sort of a tip in how to add different layers. So then I continued, which is in this video now, and I really love how the colors turned out. So I will be sticking with those. So don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. It helps the algorithm and it helps me build my channel. So, as you can see, I'm using one of my color shapers. I could have used the wedge. I like to use the brayer, but when you roll it, it leaves another texture. And I liked all the marks I will be scoring in. And for this effect, I'm using a very transparent layer of nickel azo gold. I'm going to begin another set with a Payne's Gray or another cooler transparent acrylic paint, and probably from Golden because they have wonderful. But if you don't, you can use the fluid medium. It comes in gloss or matte, and I can leave that. That one was a Liquitex. And now I'm scoring, and I'm really overdoing it with the awl. And then, if you don't quite like, you have some time here to play. And I love this little metal palette knife, and I'm sure you have some favorite tools as well. So as soon as you have that just right, of course, it needs some time to dry because it's a fairly thick layer of gesso. And that's just one layer because it's on paper. And when it's dry, it has this really nice, like a skin feeling, and which is way stronger than using the paper substrate alone. And so I'm working with two here, just so I can get a feel. And here I've let it dry. And sort of liking that. It has to be thoroughly dry because I'm planning on using a very, very watery layer of nickel azo gold. And then why I'm doing it is to bring up the texture. I find though that I might just use an ochre next time because I found the nickel azo gold, maybe I'll add a little bit to that, was so powerful. It's such a strong color. But I'm using this as a warm underlayer. So I plan to put other layers on top. Turquoise, ochre, but the colors are listed in the comment section below. And as you can see, when you go across, unexpected things happen. You couldn't plan these kinds of shapes. Now, if it starts drying on you, I use a little spritzer of a water bottle from an eye cleaning bottle because it's a very fine mist. But I really like these sections. So that was a bit of a jump, but that's okay. So that's what I did to these two. And not to waste any more time, you can experiment with that, gesso on any kind of thick paper. So here are the colors: Parchment, white, Teal from Golden. I didn't really use much manganese. I switched to the turquoise of the Liquitex, and of course but that's an underlayer, so I won't be needing it in these next layers. So it's nice and dry. And why I like it, I can rotate it in quarters, where some other artists, when you work long, you can flip it. But there's no rules, right? We make up our own rules. And that's so I can just have some things happen. And then it may end up being a composition of thirds. It may be a grid. And it may turn out like an all over, and it may turn out in quadrants. So in the four. So I'm not sure. I'm just, I'm letting those possibilities happen, and I'm being open to them. So I'm showing you, which I took out earlier from all of my collage fodder, because especially when I'm playing around, I like to use up those scraps. Big, medium, small. And you need some nice sizes. And so going in and just calming down some of that color, and of course lifting some of the layer up with the brayer, is what I love to do. And then turning it, and I'll just let you watch what I'm doing. As you can see, different size tools. I want those textures or those marks, the scratching, to show. They may or may not end up showing totally in the end, because of course I'm going to be adding some collage. So here comes the teal, and my thinking behind that was I want it to be close in value to the light color, and I'm really liking that effect. And I'm really liking the background, the warm underlayer of the nickel azo. Now, you can use raw umber, a dark approach. You can use ochre. There's many, many really nice warm underlayers. Cadmium reds are really nice as well. So I'm going to be playing around with those. So I'm really liking this. And why am I rotating it? Just so I can get some really interesting shapes going without too much thinking. I prefer no thinking, but we can't do that. It's just all a feel. And the two blues are the turquoise and the teal. I don't think, some Payne's gray there because it's nice and thin, and this is the yellow ochre that I'm using now. And mixing it with, I just put it down and I'm working quickly, because if I don't like it, if it's too dark, I can just grab some more paint, and I like to mix it right on the substrate here. When I'm doing my exploring, I may or may not do that in bigger paintings, but I might. If the value is similar color, and you just want things to happen, so you're not really interfering so much with a composition, but then that might change too. So I'm starting to get used to these color shapers. And I like organic shapes within the rectilinear, square, long lines. I'm getting used to making long, narrow shapes. So things have changed a little bit, and I'm really liking it. So I'm putting that to the side. And what I like to do is bring each piece up with the similar, because I want them to be similar but not the same. So I want each piece with the same sort of treatment of layers before then I move on. So 2 or 3 layers of this or that color, but I will definitely put it on a different way, because I'm responding to the piece in front of me, not still thinking about the one that I put to the left. And this parchment is so wonderful. Mixing it with the turquoise, mixing it with the ochre. And you see this time I'm going more in thirds. This is very similar to the latest series that I did with images. And then you see how you respond. And I love this. And that's why I want to work with 3 or 4 pieces, because one while it's drawing, or you get an idea, oh, this would be great right over here. And you can flip and, go from each painting. And they really turn out really great. I know we're not supposed to be thinking about the final product, but that is in keeping that in mind as to how these colors work together, these textures, values, colors, all of that. So now I'm just using this brush and I'm just scrumbling. That's what that's called. Going for a really thin layer. I do believe that, I think that's the turquoise. And I keep coming across, straight across. And sometimes I have to force myself to not do that because I just want something different. And knowing that the yellow is underneath and you have a darker color on top, that's what you can get when you score through another color. And then I'm just getting used to the sharp edges of this tool as to what it can do. So these are just really exploratory pieces, and I'm really looking forward to next week. This is the early stage, and they're not complete when I finish this video, but they're really looking cool. They're close because I might not want to overwork them. I might want to keep them in an earlier stage, still a final stage, but stopping where I normally would not. So you've got to keep that in mind, over painting. So yes, so I'm trying to, so I take that turquoise right down into that area just to break up this horizontal composition. I want it to be, or I'm thinking about in the back of my mind, a quadrant composition. And then it might go back because, and when I do that, they usually turn out to be a really cool grid. And I found this metal palette was much better at removing the top layer before it dried. So really wet, you can do things. Slightly dry, you can do things. And even at the end, if it's a tough enough piece of paper, you can also use sandpaper. And I do that a lot on canvas, but I don't use sandpaper. I use steel wool. And this is really interesting. See, I didn't plan for these stripy kind of shapes when I put it the horizontal way, but I'm really liking. And it's so difficult to get into this mode of, okay, something's got to go. Not really go, but I've got to add something on top of something. What will it be? So, moving dark to light, that also helps move the eye around. So it got a little dry there. So just a little spritz of water, keep that handy. And that's why I chose to use gesso first. Might as well add some texture to it because then it's a lot tougher. So, yes. Just adding some more shapes, organic shapes, as the brayer can make those when I roll them through the paint. So, yeah, I didn't quite like that orangey area interfered with. So I'm cleaning it up, and I didn't want, forgetting how light these are. So if you find it tricky to work on paper, working on a cradle board or a wooden panel, because if you buy 4 of them or so at Michael's or whatever art store you have, you can do a lot more with them, especially the sanding and removing of layers, going back down, call it excavating, and who knows what you might discover. So I'm really getting into the texture that way. I don't know if any of you follow Louis Noble. He uses so much texture on his small pieces of artwork. It's amazing what he builds up. I was checking out some of those, one of his videos today, and beautiful abstract work. So just now I'm thinking of, okay, so I have a dark shape in that corner. What would relate to it across? So I'm thinking of differences. Loving that cloudish kind of shape. Very interesting. So now I'm going to dry them up. And notice I have not added any collage yet. I wanted to let some colors occur on the substrate, on the surfaces, let some shapes go in. And now that I have sort of a rough idea as to the different possibilities, then I put the collage on. Now I've started in different stages, and that's what I'm experimenting with. Starting with the gesso layer, starting with a collage layer, large pieces, then come in with the marks, starting in with a black and white marks, and then coming in with your colors. So there's different ways, so try to do that. Okay, so now I'm seeing that I think I've taken these as far as I can for the first layer because they have to sit. At least that's how I work. That's my art process. And I really want to push myself. Loving that. Oh, and these are just the scraps, that orange and white. And it just, each little piece will call for it. Of course, I love black and white in there, blue and white polka dots. See, that orange was just too heavy for some reason. It just, maybe a little piece of it, maybe it was the ratio of it. Oh, love that stuff. It's almost like a papaya kind of orange. I've used that in the 12 6x6. Now there. I won't want to use it too much. Now I thought of circles, but I'm thinking half a circle, even a square, even the little pieces that I like to use that look like steps or stairways or staircases. And that piece of red handcrafted paper there, that little triangle, that's going to look really cool. And I love putting painted collage next to very similar painted surfaces. So you know it's similar, but yet it's different, so it's subtle. And you can get some really neat effects this way. So I've come to the time where I've been working on small pieces. I think I'm liking what's happening. So after this set, which should be next week, we'll finish these up. And then, of course, don't forget to hop over to the Facebook group and share some of your discoveries with experimenting with different types of layers. And don't forget, transparent, opaque, all the different kinds of differences you can come up with, but that are natural and you can relate to. So it needed some marks. We're going to finish up with some really cool marks. I love my graphite pencil. I love my China marker. I love the acrylic markers, Posca markers. I use those. I've got to try some other ones. I did not use pastel yet, but I'm going to when I start putting the collage pieces. So that's going to be in part 2 next week. So don't forget, stick to the end to see what happens here. Oh, I'm loving that. See, it's just calling for that. It's just which way should it go? That's okay, but now that I've seen it the vertical way, I think I like it better. But I still have a piece up there. So, wonderful. The blue and white, maybe a little bit. But the black and white is definitely looking great. That high contrast with black and white with all of your bright colors. So when I was cleaning up at the end of this video, so stick to the end and see what I do, I noticed that the turquoise and this really beautiful, I think cadmium yellow, I'll check the tube and make sure I put of course, let you know what yellow it was. It was so much brighter, but oh, it's going to be that punch. So I couldn't wait, of course. Now, I don't think I glued it down. I just wanted it to sit there. And that's what I'll do. I'll let little pieces sit. Of course, it's summertime, so I got to be careful. They don't blow away, but they won't go very far. I found some new X-Acto knives, a little larger, but I found even some smaller ones. Sharper blades really help. Oh, I did. It just had to go down. Well, that's totally fine. So now this overlapping will happen. And then the relationship between those two might trigger something else. So a layer might go on top, beside, or not. Maybe marks. So I use my Posca markers here, and I'm going to pick up the orange. I do believe orange is the hero color in these two little paintings. So I'm loving turquoise. It is my turquoise, ochre, oranges, are my favorite. Oh, wow. Isn't that neat? So as you can see, when you're putting in your collages, you might tearing them and then have another one that isn't teared. So you've got opposites, differences, sharp edge, a soft edge, and they're opposites and different sizes as well. But when you're using a color palette that's simple, like this one, and I know I'm adding that other blue, but they're very similar. So I'm not going to use the manganese. I'm not liking that. I'm liking a warmer blue. And we'll see how that goes. That is okay. I know those circles want to be in there somehow. I just haven't figured out yet. Maybe if I put them in and then cover that with another layer. Okay. And after this too, I will be doing a whole series of collage papers and how to stick with a simple color palette so that you have cohesiveness with your work. And it has that handcrafted look rather than always looking like a stencil, a commercial. So it'll really pick up your style of mark making and it'll flow together. It's amazing. So I can't wait to do that. Loving the light blues here with the parchment and the teal, and then the darker turquoise. So those are my two cools, one warm, a neutral, and a white and a black. That's it. And when I do add the yellow for next week, it's just going to be in a very small amount. I don't want to overdo it. But I'm really liking sporadic marks. Some of you said you love detail. Well, wouldn't one difference be a detailed section with a very spontaneous or soft section, area, or shape? And let me know in the comments below, what's the longest you can sit at and work on a piece before it says, okay, I just need to sit here now and just wait until the next day or just to mull it over. So I'm about an hour on a piece like this. And it depends too. It depends if it's new. It depends if it's, new things I'm working with. Oh, loving that. I love working with scraps and I want to work with them more. I have so much collage fodder. It's a sin just to, it just makes you want to think creatively and, well, how can we use these? And those dots are going on. I finally figured it out. They're ready to go. I haven't glued them down yet. But loving this. Oh yeah, I love that piece. But see, it's a commercial piece, so I only want to use a tiny bit. Oh, nice. So here comes the orange Posca marker. This is the deeper one. the lighter one and even yellow. And I like to just do these swirly lines. It's not like writing so much as just whatever comes to mind. But they are my marks, and I'm still practicing and exploring my mark making in other resources, so I can keep them as a reference. You might want to do that as well. So, yes, the China marker, just a few dots. I love using those. And I'm just sort of being a little more thoughtful as to not doing the exact same thing on each piece. Similar but not the same. Yes, so the horizontal lines versus the black, short, broken vertical lines. And then it needed some black. And I went right across, which is totally fine. It doesn't necessarily have to stay that way. Yes. And I stopped there at that line because of the vertical line below that section emphasized it going up. Now, I'll probably do something a little different, adding a little blue to that. And I think I make it a little wider because it's a little narrow. It's not bad. So even though it's dark, that also would have worked with the really light or white parchment. So adding that quieting down in between all of that energy of line, color. Okay, yes, I realized I wanted to add a little bit of stencil. So far we have the layers, and I'll write them down. I'll put them down in the comments below. Gesso with marks, a thin layer, and then coming in with different colors, rotating, and then collage after we're happy with a lot of the colors there and shapes, scoring some of that as well, and then coming in with the dark value, black. Before that was the mark making with the pencil, China marker, or whatever you have. Then the black, quieting down some sections, but adding that nice contrast. And then stenciling. Adding in, and then coming in with some, I'm still thinking black and white. I'm still thinking contrast, a higher contrast here. So you want to make sure you have a light, medium, and dark values on your pieces. And that's one thing that I've been a little more thoughtful of. Oh, and loving that red, shiny little beautiful piece right there next to the red. So it's in there, but it's a little quieter rather than being alone. And then I decided, yes, this does need to be a little wider, which then allows this really interesting shape. So you see it because of the high contrast. Oh, I'm really liking that. Good decision. So now the black, notice the black layer. Now there's some depth here. And sometimes I don't want depth because I come from this landscape background that it just doesn't want to escape me. So I've just sort of let things go. A lot of my work looks like it is a place. I don't know what it is. Even if they're circles or something, it's so interesting. So I'm just coming in, adding a little more blue. That's the teal and parchment. Oh, these are, what are we calling them? Staining. So staining is another way to really punch up a way which is in your final stages or the late middle stage. So really loving the colors that are happening here, the shapes, the marks. And it just needed, I wanted to echo some of that orange, but with some black. Just bringing the eye here and there. I used this piece of collage on another piece, and I don't know, it's going to cover up the yellow that I love. That might work somewhere around there. It's still sitting around those pieces on my art journaling table. And that's it for part 1. So here's some close-ups, side by side, and then I show each one individually a lot closer. So here's the marks, the collage, scraps, and you can see all the layering. The more layers, the better. So I hope you enjoyed this little video about layering, shapes, texture. And don't forget to check out my new shop. The link is in the description below, and I will see you in the next video.